Hi, hello, and welcome to part 2, the sequel, if you will, to an epic collab that Martina and I started a couple of weeks ago. So my beautiful friend Martina Lily and I posted our first collab video a couple of weeks ago when she guest starred on my pet pairing series. So we did makeup looks focused on Pat McGrath Labs. And when one of you suggested that we continue this collaboration focusing on our other beloved queen, Lisa Eldridge, we kind of like both jumped onto the opportunity, because honestly what happens when you put two makeup nerds together is that they just want to keep talking about makeup. I think that we can all agree collectively here that that's something we all enjoy about our channels here, that we both just are true makeup nerds. We truly love the makeup. We are both here for the love of makeup. So I think I'm going to skip the lengthy introduction that I posted in the previous video. I just wanted to add a little personal note here that now, you know, it's been a couple of weeks and I've had a bit of time to like enjoy the video and all of the reactions that it has gotten, our first collab video, and I tremendously enjoyed doing that video, so much more than I anticipated. I had just forgotten how wonderful it is to have a friend on YouTube, because I've mentioned this a couple of times, but a lot of my like old school YouTube friends unfortunately don't post as much content, if at all, anymore. So I was sort of getting this like very lonely feeling on the tubes the last couple of years, and it's really been wonderful to find Martina and to connect with her, and doing this collab video together just reminded me of how much fun it can be to connect to a fellow YouTube creator and to do something fun together, such as this video. Goes without saying that her video and her channel will be linked in the description box below. Honestly guys, I think by now you know the spiel, because this is not our first rodeo here. I'm going to briefly explain the concept of this video, because it's basically going to be a continuation of what we did last time. So last time we did a video where we focused on Pat McGrath Labs, and what we did for each other is pick the eyeshadow palettes. In this specific case though, since Lisa Eldridge is the queen of lipsticks, we have picked lipsticks for each other, and Martina has picked Velvet Cinnabar for me. So I'm going to be doing a look with as many Lisa Eldridge products as I have, and I'm going to come back to that in a second. And just like we did in the Pat McGrath Labs video, we're once again going to be answering questions. Martina has come up with like a whole of 8 new questions for us to address in this video, and again, you're very welcome to share your answers to any of these questions. I'm going to leave them in the description box as well. I will be completely honest with you, as I was thinking about it, I realized that I in fact own a lot of lip products from Lisa Eldridge. I have a lot of her lipsticks and her lip liners, but the rest of my Lisa Eldridge collection is actually rather limited. I have 2 of her eyeshadow palettes, I have a couple of her pencil liners, and I have one of her now discontinued blushes, which I keep in a depotted little container, because unfortunately the little tube that it was originally housed in broke. That was also one of the reasons that Lisa Eldridge pulled this from the market. The packaging of these was just not optimal, and I'm going to, like, as we go along, share why I don't have a product from a certain category from her, if she does offer that kind of product indeed. And for other categories she obviously doesn't have any products yet, because she's slowly expanding her line. But Martina and I are both huge fans of both Lisa Eldridge the person and Lisa Eldridge the brand, so I think whatever products we have, you know, it will be still a super fun video. Alright, let's get into the fun part of this video, answer some questions and apply makeup. I'm first going to start with my eyeshadow primer. Lisa Eldridge doesn't have an eyeshadow primer, so I'm just going to use mine, which is the Urban Decay Primer Potion, good old Urban Decay Primer Potion. First question, apart from Sephora, where do you do your main shopping in the Netherlands? Is it hard to get new releases like it is in Australia? So, let me start by breaking the news. We don't have a Sephora in the Netherlands. They left, I want to say, in 2013, and they haven't really been back since. So I have to say, shopping for makeup has gotten a lot better in the Netherlands than it used to be. There was a time when it was practically impossible to find a lot of like the cool brands that were all hip in Sephora years ago. Any of the new releases, you can forget about it. Maybe like half a year later. But I have to say, with the appearance of, you know, online shops like Beauty Bay, like Cult Beauty, and other sort of retailers, it has gotten a little bit more easy to find makeup. But yeah, within the Netherlands it remains quite limited, and I think part of the reason why it has gotten easier for me to get makeup here now is because I just shifted my focus from brands that are very difficult to get a hold of here to the more luxury brands, which have always been a little bit easier to get here, because the two stores that we have here, the two retailers that offer makeup are called Douglas and Easy. I'm pretty sure that they're spread all over Europe, or at least some of them are available in a lot of European countries, and they're basically the two, you know, shops that monopolize that industry space. These two shops basically are a little bit more focused on like the classic luxury brands like Dior, Chanel, Gucci, that kind of thing. And even within that realm, the range of products that they offer can still be quite limited. They don't often have limited edition collections, or sometimes they get the limited edition collection but like a lot later. So it has gotten a little bit easier, but that's for one because I like sort of changed my makeup habits and focused on brands that are relatively easy to get, but also because they've quite expanded the range of brands that they offer. For example, Douglas, you know, started offering Too Faced, they carry Pat McGrath Labs. Easy used to carry Urban Decay and, for example, Huda Beauty, which were like mid-tier brands that were quite hip a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, Urban Decay seems to not have been doing very well because they stopped offering Urban Decay altogether. So if I want to get Urban Decay now, I really have to shop from some sort of a retailer completely outside of the Netherlands, because I don't think there's Urban Decay in the Netherlands at all. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it is possible to order their products from other retailers, but I don't think they're offered here at all. Their own website closed and their counters in Easy are gone as well. Okay, let's do foundation. Now, unfortunately, I don't have Lisa's foundation. I've tried it a couple of times in the sample form, and I like and dislike that foundation at the same time, because I love how it applies, I love how it looks on the skin, how it like spreads on the skin, but I did not love how it wore on my skin, unfortunately. It just didn't have a very good lasting power, and by the end of the day it looked quite messy and it basically wore away. I don't really know why, but for whatever reason my skin did not get along with Lisa's foundation. So what I'm going to do is choose a foundation from my collection that I feel like has a similar texture to it, and that is the Prada Reveal foundation. It has this similar like gel texture that spreads very beautifully on the skin, only this one tends to wear quite much better, and I like it so much more in terms of wear than I liked the foundation from Lisa Eldridge. I also don't have her skin tint. She recently released a skin tint, but I currently don't have a need for a skin tint in my collection because it's not something I use a lot, and I already have the Chanel Water Fresh, whatever it's called, the skin tint from Chanel, which I really enjoy. So there is really no opening in my collection for a skin tint at the moment. I think eventually I will try the skin tint, but currently I do not have any base products from Lisa Eldridge. So Prada Reveal foundation in the shade LN5 it is for me today. But to go back to Martina's question about shopping for makeup, I think it is possible for us via a variety of different retailers or just like the web shops of the brands themselves to get the products that would otherwise be offered at Sephora. But you know, you get that like very spread out shopping strategy where you have to like waste a lot of money sometimes on shipping. Now that the UK is out of Europe, there is unfortunately the additional taxes that you have to pay on whatever you order from the UK. So for example, I'm not really sure how it works now. I think Feel Unique was taken over by Sephora and we can shop from Sephora from the UK, and I think I have shopped from them once before, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like even the European versions of Sephora don't always release collections at the same time as the US, which I remember in the past was very frustrating. And I'm really happy that, for example, we can easily shop from Pat McGrath, from Lisa Eldridge, and whatever else I have needs for, I can go on Cult Beauty or, like I said, Douglas and Easy. It is a bit more spread out, but I think for the most part I can get a hold of anything that I really wanted to. Okay, for concealer, Lisa Eldridge hasn't released officially a concealer yet, as there's been rumors, you know, through the grapevine that she's been working on a concealer. I want to say at one point someone was even selling her concealer on Vinted, so there's definitely something in the works, but officially no word, it has not been released. So I'm going to take the Chanel Sublimage concealer. Fun fact, this was a Martina inspired purchase. This is a really expensive product, but I'm happy to report that it really works for my really finicky under eyes. Alright, question number 2. If you weren't working as a scientist, what would your dream career be if you could be anything? I hope that Martina is going to answer the same question, but like in the context of her own job, because I'm very curious to hear her answer. So I want to preface my answer here by saying that I mean this completely and utterly unironically. I love my job so much that I never really dream of being anything else. Like, even within the realms of my dreams, if I were something else, I would still be a scientist. Maybe I've mentioned this, but if I were a little bit smarter, I think I would have really enjoyed a career in astrophysics or like theoretical physics or something in that realm, because I'm truly fascinated by it. But like I've mentioned before, I'm a simpleton biologist, and that is why I do biology and not astrophysics. But I truly love my job, and I'm saying that from the perspective of someone who has had to think really hard, what are other options, what is another career path that I could follow if I cannot be a scientist anymore. Because unfortunately academic science is a very fickle career path, so to say. It comes with a lot of uncertainty, with a lot of job insecurity. Permanent contracts are extremely rare in academia, so maybe if you are not familiar with how the whole process works, you do your bachelor's, then you do your master's, then you do your PhD. And in some countries your PhD is considered a study, in others it's considered more like a starter job. I think in the Netherlands they consider a PhD more to be like a starter job, whereas in countries like Germany, for example, or the UK, I think it's considered more like almost a part of your study. And after that, if you follow an academic track, the next step in your career would be a postdoctoral researcher, like 1 or 2 short postdocs, because postdocs are always temporary, short, and it's always recommended that you travel around the world to do those, which sounds very romantic and really fun, unless you consider the possibility that by the time you're doing your postdocs, you're already in your mid-30s and you would really like to settle down, start a family, have a bit of like permanency in your life. Like the time when you were traveling around during your master's and PhD is done, and now you want to settle down, which, you know, a complete mismatch there in goals. But anyway, you do 1 or 2 short postdocs, in which time you are required to not only do your like experimental work and write papers, but also secure your own financing so that you can start your own research groups. Because ultimately that's really the career like path that you follow if you are truly like to follow the academic career to its ultimate goal, which is to become a group leader or a professor, you know, and then be settled for life with tenure. Which, by the way, sounds like it's a time of your life when you finally have permanency, but it really is not, because if you don't secure finance to do your research, you're still majorly screwed. I'm going to set my foundation with the Backstage powder from Dior in the shade 2N. So why was I talking about that? Oh yeah, because personally I have no interest in becoming a group leader. It is just not the part of the job that I consider to be fun. I like being at the lab, I like setting up new techniques, I like helping the PhD students, I like, you know, overseeing all the different projects and, you know, really helping with the day-to-day of how to move these projects forward. But I do not want to sit behind a desk, sit in meetings all day, I do not want to write grants, I do not want to be responsible for the well-being of PhD students who need to graduate within a certain amount of time and have published papers. I want to do the fun part of research, but I don't want, you know, all the extra not fun responsibility that comes with becoming a group leader. So I made that choice a couple of years ago, and I knew that that puts me in a very difficult position, because getting a job, like a permanent contract as a postdoc, is basically the unicorn of contracts. It doesn't exist. So I have had to think a lot about, okay, what are my other options if I'm not going to be a scientist? Like I said, in an ideal world, if I could pick a different career, I would still pick for science because I just really love it. I would just pick for a different kind of science. But in a practical world, what my ideas were of a different career path if I weren't being a scientist. One of the things that I considered, which is like sort of adjacent to science, is learning how to program, because now, especially with the advancement of AI technology, with the advancement in, you know, in DNA sequencing, in proteomics, there is really a huge need for people who can program, so they can help the people like me, the people who are at the lab, to properly interpret their data by applying bioinformatics. So I have considered, I'm by the way going to quickly do my brows, again a category where Eldridge hasn't really released the products. I'm just going to use my favorite, which is the Too Faced Laminating Brow Wax. So I did consider for a little bit to just take a course. I did actually sort of like follow a course on one of those like websites a couple of years ago in Python, and I thought, you know, coding is fun enough in the sense that it's not really all that different from research, only instead of being at the lab, you're behind a computer and you're writing a code. And if anything, I've heard from bioinformaticians that it's much easier, much less frustrating to solve problems within your code than it is problem solving things at the lab, because when something doesn't work with your code, you can always go back and there's always a reason why your code isn't working. You can always fix it. Whereas with experimental work, sometimes it's a total black box. You did the experiment in the same way you did it yesterday. You used the same reagents, but maybe the position of the moon was different and that's why your experiment is failing today. Maybe just like as a really fun example, which even now is not really fun because it was really traumatizing at the time. But a couple of years ago, I was setting up this new experiment for which I had to send samples to the mass spectrometer. And I want to say for over half a year, month after month after month, my samples came back with polymer masking. They couldn't detect any peptides in my sample because all that they could detect were these like large polymer molecules, nothing else. And towards the end, I was getting really desperate and really frustrated, because when things at the lab don't work, you want to separate your work from you as a person. You want to believe that it's not your fault. But trust me, 99% of the time we think it's our fault and we're doing something wrong. Do you know what happened in the end? It turned out that the department where I work had recently switched from using one brand of EPIs, so like little tubes of which hold 1.5 or 2 ml of liquid. It had switched from one brand to another brand, and we had switched from a somewhat more expensive brand to a somewhat cheaper brand. And the somewhat cheaper brand, the plastic probably wasn't holding up properly, so when I was doing the procedure that is required before you send your samples to the mass spectrometer, the plastic was leaching into my sample, completely masking whatever was going on in there. That was the reason my experiment was failing, which will never happen if you're coding, right? You can just find the mistake in your code, fix it, and then things work. Or you don't have to like repeat something that takes months or like weeks to repeat, which could easily be the case for experimental lab work. Anyway, I went on like a huge tangent here, and my other like completely different career path, since I want to use Lisa's cream blushes, which I still have by the way, I'm going to stick to cream products for the rest of my face, and I'm going to take this very old Chanel Soleil Tendre Chanel cream bronzer. This is from their original release. I've had this since 2017. I know this because I bought it the year that we moved here, which was July 2017. So it's quite old, but you know, it has a decent amount of pan in it, so I'm actually quite happy that I've made so much use out of it. And very recently, when I was thinking about, you know, potentially switching career paths, I actually considered the possibility of doing a job in like the beauty industry, because the headquarters of one of those like big retailer stores that I was talking about in my previous for the previous question actually have their headquarters, like I said, here. And I did consider the possibility, if they would be open to that, to just maybe with a few extra like months or a year of studying something that is a bit more, you know, within the business side of things, I did consider the possibility of switching careers and just working in the beauty industry. I think that might have been really fun as well. So, yeah. So, you know, in an ideal world, I will continue to be a scientist because that's really what I'm passionate about and what I love doing. And I'm so incredibly lucky, I know, that I love my job, because I know for a lot of other people that's not the case. I know that I'm in a very luxurious position to do what I love. So, in an ideal world, I would never change my job. But if I had to, I think the coding and the beauty industry would be the two paths that I might potentially follow. This is still a really lovely bronzer, beautiful formula, so easy to apply, so easy to blend. It has a beautiful undertone to it. I'm very happy that it has served me for so many years and it's still going strong. Thank you, Chanel. Alright, let's get into blush. So, like I said, my original packaging broke, so unfortunately I had to repot my blush, but even if it is a little bit dried out, I feel like it is still usable. So this is in the shade Dante's Dream, which is this beautiful, like sort of like neutral, slightly warm terracotta. I really love the shade of this, and the formula is also quite nice. Unfortunately, as you can also see, it has dried out quite significantly. It was really not as dry before. I just think keeping it in this pot is not ideal. So what I will usually do is I will take a little bit like this on the back of my hand, then using my large fluffy synthetic brush I will just dip a little bit like this and then put it on my skin. Oops. Apparently I'm going for the bozo look today. But just to demonstrate the versatility of this formula, it just melts into the skin and it blends out so incredibly easily, and this is just such a beautiful shade. So I hope she's going to eventually bring this formula back in an optimized packaging, because it truly is so nice and the colors were so pretty. I actually quite liked the original packaging of this. It was this beautiful white tube, like really elegant, with a very tiny squeeze, you know, dispenser, but it just the formula was too thick, and then the tube just like popped on the opposite side of the dispenser. So that's the reason that she recalled these from the market and refunded everyone. So that's really cool. She refunded me even though my blush broke, like I want to say a year after I purchased it. I think that also like tells you enough about Lisa Eldridge as a brand. Okay, question number 3. What kind of podcasts are you into? If you aren't into podcasts, what kind of music are you into? If you listen to both, answer both. I am into podcasts, and you're going to laugh. We can go through my current list of podcasts so that you can have a good laugh at it. So my podcasts are Daniel and Jorge Explain the Universe. So there's this dude, Jorge Cham, who started the PhD comic many years ago, and it was sort of like this like comical view on the life of a PhD student. It was like just always super accurate. It was this cartoon thing. It was always really funny. It always made our days. And he published a book with a physicist, I think I want to say a couple of years ago, where they went through some of the newest concepts in astrophysics and in theoretical physics, and they tried to explain them in very layman terms. And I want to say that they've now started a podcast together. So I've been listening to that. The other podcast I've been listening to is Mindscape with Sean Carroll. Sean Carroll is also a physicist, and I remember listening to a talk from him on the Royal Institution lectures. So if you are at all into listening about sciencey things, I highly recommend the Royal Institution talks, because they are just always so well done, so approachable, and they always explain these really complex topics in, I think, in a very fairly digestible manner. And I vividly remember Sean Carroll's talk because it was the first time ever that I somewhat remotely understood what the Higgs boson is. So he has a podcast. I like to listen to his podcast as well. Then I think you're all familiar with Neil deGrasse Tyson, another physicist. The Star Talk podcast with him is also one of my favorites, although I haven't listened to that in a really long time. I also really enjoyed Sam Harris. Sam Harris is, I want to say, a neurobiologist slash philosopher. And sometimes the topics that he talks about are too complex even for me to comprehend, but he seems like a real like stand-up person with like really solid moral and ethical values. So basically the podcasts that I listen to revolve around science. Okay, highlighter. Unfortunately, I do not have any of the liquid highlighters that Lisa currently carries. I am slightly maybe tempted to try one of the shades, but I don't know that liquid highlighter is for me. And the reason is that I currently discovered the Victoria Beckham cream highlighters. I have the shade Pearl here, which is not an ideal shade for me. It is a little bit maybe frosty, but to be honest, it mostly looks like wet shine on my cheekbones. She does have a warmer version of this, and to be honest with you, I'm extremely tempted to purchase the warmer version of this because I really like this product. I love how it applies on the skin, how it looks on the skin, how it wears, how long lasting it is. So yeah, this is currently my favorite like cream highlighter. So I don't know that I'm super tempted by like the liquid highlighters from Lisa, because I don't know that liquid highlighter truly is for me. When it comes to music, I love music, but I'm so unbelievably promiscuous when it comes to my music taste. I can listen to and enjoy everything ranging from 80s pop rock, 90s boy bands, indie singer-songwriters and ending on Broadway musicals. I love all of it. Basically, if it's music that I enjoy, I will listen to it. Classical music I enjoy as well. So as long as it's enjoyable music, I don't really like metal and like the really hardcore loud type of music. There needs to be some sort of a melody, and if there is some sort of like a profound emotional text coupled to that, fantastic. I'm going to answer question number 4 while setting my face. What is your go-to guilty pleasure? Taking the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush setting spray on my sponge. My go-to guilty pleasure. What is my go-to guilty pleasure? Okay, I've come up with one which I think is a true guilty pleasure. I love Coke, like Coca-Cola. I think it's my favorite guilty pleasure drink. For the rest, I don't really like the frizzy drinks so much. But when it comes to cola, it's one of those things that I can't say no to. So to this day, if I come home from work and I'm feeling a little bit tired and I need a little bit of like something to kickstart me again, I'll take a glass of cola with a lot of ice, and that's my guilty pleasure. Alright, you're a little bit zoomed in so we can do the eye look. I have 2 of Lisa Eldridge's eyeshadow palettes. I have the eyeshadow palette in the shade Sorcery, and I also have Vega, and I really love both of them. Vega in particular has a really like special place in my heart because it is one of my favorite like neutral cooler toned eye palettes. I really love Sorcery as well. There are some really special shades in here, but Vega just pulls out some really special strings in my heart. I'm going to try to somehow combine the 2 of them together, even though they're not like ideally suited to complement each other, because Vega, like the shades in Vega are quite cool toned, whereas the shades in Sorcery are a bit more of a balance between cool and warm. And the shade that I want to use a bit more today, in fact, this one here, the Olive Green, obviously leans a bit warmer, but we're going to try to make it work. So I'm first going to go into the Vega palette, and I'm going to take this shade here. This is the shade Turbulence, which is one of her mattes. It's a bit more of like a neutral to slightly cool brown shade. While I'm applying this shade in my crease with my little fluffy brush here, I'm going to answer question number 5, which is, do you live by a particular mantra? Oh, really good questions, Martina. So I don't know that I live by a particular mantra, but there are, you know, things that I have either like learned from my parents that I try to live by, or things that I have, you know, for myself decided to sort of like follow in life. Something that I have very strongly from my mother is to be overly critical. That's probably not the way to say it, but to be critical. Like when someone says, oh, the earth is round, don't just believe them that the earth is round. Go and check for yourself. Make sure that you make your own, you know, informed opinion on why you think something is the way it is. I try to live by this lesson that I have adopted from her, and I am going to do my best to pass along this, you know, mantra to my son as well, because I think it's really important, especially in this day and age of overwhelming amounts of information, to be able to do your own research, think for yourself, and don't just follow the sheeple. I'm not really sure that that qualifies as like what mantra is implied to be, but you know, maybe we can call it something adjacent to that. I'm going to go back into the Vega palette now, and I'm going to take the black shade, which I think is something with lamp black. Beautiful, beautiful shade, and I'm going to apply that a little bit here in my lashes to give a little bit of body and depth to the lash line. A little bit as a wing liner shape, but without really doing a wing liner. This is a makeup technique that I really enjoy for myself. And we can move on to the next question. Question number 6. Where is the most beautiful place you have ever seen in person? This is a hard one, because I am not a very like well-traveled person. And maybe to put it into context for you, I grew up in post-communist Eastern Europe. People didn't have money to travel. The first time I ever left the country, I was 21, and I went to like a course that I had applied for a scholarship for. I think it was like an RNA course in Trieste in Italy. We traveled by bus. It was like just crossing the border between Bulgaria and Serbia. I was completely like mesmerized by the experience. So I first left the country when I was 21. The first time I set foot on a plane was when I came to the Netherlands when I was 23. And after that I've done, you know, a little bit of traveling here and there. I've been to the US once, I've been to Canada once, I've been to a couple of European countries, but I can't really say that in any of those places I have seen, you know, a spectacularly beautiful view that has left an impression on me. So I think for the answer to this question, I'm going to go with something that is a little bit more sentimental. But before we get into my mushy side, we're going to take a little bit of the NYX glitter glue. I'm going to apply that on my moving lid, and then we're going to take a couple of the metallic eyeshadows to mix together. So I was born in the capital city of Bulgaria, which is Sofia, beautiful city. It is all the way on like the western side of the country, and the whole eastern border of Bulgaria is the Black Sea. And ever since I was a kid, every year for holiday, we would, you know, go cross country with the car to enjoy a holiday at the beach. And I've always loved the sea, I've always loved the beach. Just little interruption here. I'm going to go now into the Sorcery palette. I'm going to take the shade Mage, which is this really interesting, like neutrally greenish type of shade here. And I'm going to apply that all over my lid. But I'm going to apply it a bit more as like a sheer layer, because I want to layer something over top of that. But I like to go on holiday to the Black Sea in Bulgaria pretty much. I don't think that I've skipped many years. Since I moved here, I've been back to the Black Sea almost every year. And every year, as we drive across country and as we reach the beach, and especially that like as we're driving and I catch that like first glimpse of the Black Sea, it always does something to me. I always get really emotional. I've shed tears on a couple of occasions because it is just truly the most beautiful view to me. I love the view of the Black Sea. The serenity of the sea, the nostalgia, the memories, you know, all the emotions that it brings. So it may not be like technically the most beautiful view in the world, but to me personally, getting a glimpse of the Black Sea every year without fail manages to evoke so many emotions in me. So to me, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Okay, let's do a little bit of experimentation here. This is what I would call it. I'm going to take a little bit of this shade here. I want to say this is the shade Madrigal. Yeah, it's the shade Madrigal. And I want to kind of like mix the two, because I want to give this shade a bit of like a hint of that olivey green, but I don't really want to have the olivey green like full on. So I'm going to just take my finger here and apply a light layer of this, and then kind of like start smooshing the two shades together using my finger. And I think we're going to create something that is, you know, quite interesting in tone. Question number 7. If you could collab with a brand, who would that be and what is the product? Who? I don't know that there's really any other answer here to that than Pat McGrath Labs and a mothership. I mean, I am fully aware of the fact that it's never going to happen, but in, you know, a fantasy world where I could pick who to collab with and what to make, it would absolutely be the dream mothership that I talked about in my previous video, and it would be with Pat McGrath Labs. And if I could, you know, sip tea while discussing my mothership concept with Pat McGrath, and, you know, me addressing all of the questions that I have about the motherships, also something that I discussed in the previous video, that would just, you know, that would be my fantasies. I could die happy. And I think at this point I'm going to stop, because I think if I apply a little bit more of Madrigal, I'm going to completely lose the tone of Mage underneath. So I'm going to leave it at that. For inner corner highlight, again, very tricky, because I don't know that any of the shades that are in here truly are going to be quite suitable for that. But the only shade that I can use as an inner corner highlight from these two palettes really is this one from Vega. This is the shade Supernova. Supernova is gorgeous, but it is a little bit more pink tone, so let's see how this is going to go. Question number 8, which is also the last question. What is the best makeup tip you have ever learned? I know that one also. Many years ago, when I first, you know, was dipping my toes into makeup like YouTube makeup, because I've been doing my makeup for a really long time, but I was doing really like the basics and I had no like skill or technique to speak of. I was just doing things. And then when makeup like BeauTube appeared in my life, I tried to follow specifically the techniques of Marlena from Makeup Geek, trying to do a smoky eye. And inevitably, every time I tried to do a smoky eye using similar brushes, using similar eyeshadows, I would end up looking like I got a black eye or like a panda. And inevitably, I just wouldn't know what am I doing wrong. And then I remember watching a video from someone. I was introduced to the concept of the transition shade. You know, that like sort of neutral eyeshadow that you start your look with, that you blend through your crease, that makes the blending of other eyeshadows so much easier, and it also prevents you from taking your dark color all the way up to your brow. My world was changed. That was really the best makeup tip that I have ever gotten, using a neutral brown eyeshadow or like whatever kind of lighter shade to start your crease with before applying really dark eyeshadows, especially if you're doing a smoky eye. I'm going to finish off my lower lash line easy peasy just by going back into the neutral brown shade from Vega. And that will be more or less it for this look. And in my like waterline, unfortunately Lisa hasn't graced us yet with an olive green pencil, so I'm just going to take this one from Essence because I think it would be a nice addition to this look. And finally, on my lips, I'm going to not just cinnabar it, I'm going to triple cinnabar it, because I happen to have the lip liner, the velvet, and the gloss embrace in the shade Cinnabar. So I'm going to apply all three. I'm actually not going to apply Cinnabar to its full opacity. I applied it a little bit in the center, and I'm going to use my finger to just like smoosh it a bit around to sheer it out. If you have the lip liner brush from Lisa Eldridge, it would probably be far better to use her lip liner brush for that. And finally, I'm going to apply just a tiny bit of the lip gloss in the shade Cinnabar. So guys, we're not quite finished with this look, because in my enthusiasm to apply Cinnabar, I completely forgot to do my mascara. So I'm going to do my mascara off camera, and then I'll be back to show you the truly finished look. And this has actually happened to me a couple of times before. Like, I would go to work and all day I would feel like something is off, something is not quite right. And then only at the end of the day I would look at myself in the mirror and realize, Dumbo, you forgot to apply mascara. Does that ever happen to you guys? Alright you guys, so this is the final look now with mascara and everything. I hope that you enjoyed this look. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I had so much fun with the questions, such good questions, Martina. Thank you so much for coming up with them. This was really fun. Overall, I hope that in an Avengers-like style, this is going to be a sort of like a franchise where we will have multiple sequels to this collab, because I've been having so much fun with this collab. I think I could like turn this into like a recurring series. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, you guys. Don't forget to check out Martina's video. I'm going to also leave the questions in the description box below, so that if you want to answer any of them, please feel free, because I love getting to know you guys better as well. As usual, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!